All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. Pretty interesting night in S&P futures. And why do I say that? I say that because there just wasn't much movement. Now, market closed about right here with futures, right? And we saw them take a rally ahead of U.S. President Trump's speech. And then U.S. President Trump spoke. And futures are pretty much at that same level, having only traded in about a 10-point range. That's one of the tightest overnight ranges that we have seen. And you could argue there were a few more catalysts last night than what we had seen, right? So it's been a very kind of tight range here on the market overnight. And one where, you know, we can make an argument, oh, well, U.S. President Trump said this and catalyzed this and that and the other. But the reality is S&P futures, really no real movement after U.S. President Trump spoke, right? So it's one where the market set the gap up a little bit this morning, right? And you can see the little bit of rally that S&P futures have had over about the last hour and a half. Well, what's really interesting about that rally in S&P futures over the last hour and a half is it really corresponds with a trend that we have been seeing so far this year. And it has been a very heavy trend. And I'm going to bring just a little bit of a news feed over. This is one of my news feeds. You can see Apple price target lowered. Okay, great, from 200 to 160. PFG downgraded at Evercore. All right. But when you kind of come through this, most things are upgrades from the analyst, right? It's one of those where there are just a lot of analyst upgrades so far this year, every single morning. And, occasionally we see a few downgrades here and there, but most of them are price target changes based on, the recent correction. Or some sort of energy downgrade, which, is kind of looked a lot like some bottom calling more than anything. But we're talking about a market that every morning is getting some key upgrades in some key groups and some key sectors. And, this morning, Micron upgraded, Foot Locker upgraded, a bunch of energy names upgraded, Akamai, Noble Energy upgraded, DHI upgraded, Deere price target raised, Facebook, remains positive as a dominant social media site. We did get a downgrade in Lowe's. I do think that's very interesting. From Duke Realty, we have commercial real estate in here. We have HCP and Urban Outfitters in here, so some retail, VMW, so a little bit of tech. It has been kind of upgrade city. It's not all upgrades, but there have been a lot of analyst upgrades to begin 2019, and that has been a very predominant theme. That has been a theme that has been in the market every single day since the beginning of this year. And I think it speaks to one thing, and pretty much one thing only: that fundamentally, when you look at stocks in this market from a fundamental perspective, they are much cheaper today than they were even a year ago. Their valuations, their key metrics are significantly, not just a little bit, but significantly cheaper today. Now, does that mean the stocks have to go up? No, not necessarily, because if they don't have the growth to go with it, with those valuations, then we're going to see them get sold even further. But if these companies come out and they just have even modest growth, the valuations are such to where we could see some very significant upside associated here with them over time. right? I personally, I don't think the dips are done. I don't think all the turmoil is done. In fact, I get a little antsy when we don't see major news coming out of the trade talks between U.S. and China, and we've had a little bit of news, but we haven't had that. Hey, here's the deal. Here's here's the action here. We just haven't had that just yet, and that's a little bit concerning. That is, for some, very concerning. But so far it's just one of those things where where the market's looking at this as trade tensions are easing. They're at the table, they're talking, they're not walking away with, big outrageous demands. Some of the early leaks that have been kind of coming out of those meetings, are that, some of the differences are being resolved. Narrowed, whatever term you want to use there, but they're working their way through it, and that's what we're seeing from some of the reports that are out there. We are seeing oil up big again here this morning, breaking back above 50. This is one where pretty much as OPEC talked about cutting production, we just saw oil tank. OPEC's going to cut production. OPEC's going to cut production. They're going to cut production. OPEC says we're going to cut production. Production cuts are coming, and oil just sold. OPEC production cuts start to kick in on Monday. We see that initial rally, few days of flat. Reports start to come in that production cuts are actually happening. And we have seen oil pretty much go straight up since, in a pretty monster rally here for it. But you can see that over the last 3 weeks, kind of what it's done. Here in the way that it's moved, and I think it's a pretty interesting argument that this is a bottoming move. We'll see if we get a little higher or low on the next sell-off. If we do, that'll bring in some more major money into the oil space and help drive that significantly higher here. It's also one where there's some pressure taken off the downside of oil if trade tensions between the U.S. and China, are alleviated, right? If the world doesn't go into a big old global recession, and some of those tensions are alleviated, that's, fairly bullish for oil overall. Now, going into the day, I have a position on GLD, a call position on GLD, so basically gold, and I have cash. And I mentioned yesterday that the market gap's down today. There are quite a few put opportunities that I would like to go after. Obviously, we're not getting a market gap down here today, so it kind of eliminates those, at least for the moment. We're getting about a 10-point gap up this morning. Very tepid, very, if we count fair value, it's 8 points. One that looks very energy focused and analyst focused. Doesn't look like it's major money, set to come into the markets here this morning. So I do want to see how things open, how things play around, how things dance. Here this morning before making any decisions. We are seeing the emerging market ETF, moving up sizably here this morning, up about 1%. The Chinese ETF, both of which lagged here over the last couple days, outperforming here this morning as those markets had a little bit of strength overnight. And, so we'll be kind of taking a look at things here as they open and, as they sit. Now, gold here overnight, you can see that, here, let me pull up gold futures. You can see here that gold, this is when U.S. President Trump started to speak, 1900. Right here is when he started to speak. And, gold was pretty much, same level, fell pretty much all overnight. And then here in the last little bit has seen a pretty heavy volume, uptick. It's only 6 points, right? We're really kind of zoomed in. This is only 6 points in gold. So it's a pretty small move, overall. If we back this out to an hourly chart, and look at the move, you can see what it looks like. It's a fairly small move, but GLD is going to open up flat here this morning. I'm not looking to jump out of it right here or anything like that. I do think if it breaks below some of the overnight lows, that's a pretty good sign that the rally is over and, tops are in. So, we'll have to react to that if that occurs. Not something I'm expecting to occur, but, we'll be alert to that as the day progresses. I'm not looking to hit a huge home run here with gold. I'm looking kind of like with Under Armour, looking to carve out, about $400 or $500 and, and take it and go. And I have enough cash for another position where I'll be looking to do that same thing. And if we can stack in, two more small gains like that, we'll be back up around the 3,000 area and, ready to kind of kick into high gear as, earnings season starts to come in, as we start to see, real compression and implied volatilities, and, looking forward here to that. But do need to stack in a couple nice gains here, as we kick off 2019. Thanks for hopping on. Have yourselves a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.